Hello and welcome to the 313 Connect podcast live on the Leggy Sports YouTube channel. We have a lot to talk about. And by a lot, I mean not a lot. We don't have that much to talk about. Sean, I'm rusty. Can you tell? But we haven't been on in a little bit. I'm excited to be back. Baby is very happy and healthy for those who didn't know. But there's a lot going on in the Pistons space of things, Sean. Let's start with the finals, though, because it's going to Game 7, the first one since 2016. What does that mean for the NBA in terms of just kind of adding that wrinkle, adding that layer into the puzzle?
I mean, it's the two best words in sports, Game 7. And then you throw in the other two best words in sports and you combine it together and you get NBA Finals Game 7. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, how does it get any better than that? Especially with two young teams with like budding dynamic stars. This is a, like talk about a place where you can make your legacy, or begin your legacy is in the finals and in a Game 7. So I think this, I think there was a lot of, like unease, I guess I would say, or trepidation, even though like I think a lot of basketball fans were excited about this series and knew it had potential to be, to be really good. But with OKC being as dominant as they have been, there was a real chance that the Pacers could have been steamrolled. Not only has it not been that way at all, we might be in for like, if Game 7 is what we think it could be, this could be the best NBA Finals, arguably one of the best of the 2000s, like since 2000. Like, this is an all-timer. So to me, I think it's been absolutely great for the league, even though, like ratings have been like technically down. The big thing is you need to be able to like build up younger stars. And that's been the biggest problem the league has had. Whereas this finals is literally forcing them to establish their younger stars and to do it with two markets that are starving for a championship. That's been what's really been fun too. It's just both of the atmospheres have been electric. The fan bases have really been into it. And I don't think you could have had two teams more evenly matched than the Thunder and the Pacers are right now. So I think it's been really good for the league. It's been absolutely fun to watch. And I legitimately keep going back and forth on who I think is going to win. Like, I do not know who will win Game 7, straight up.
Yeah, with Halliburton having that injury and going into Game 7 still with that injury, it's going to be tough for them to pull it off, but they just did it in the toughest game of the season.
Well, and that's the thing that's so hard to even think about too, is like after Tyrese was hobbling out of the stadium for Game 4, it was like, oh man, or for Game 5, excuse me, is like, oh man, series is over. Like, how can he doesn't look like he's going to be able to go out and give you what he normally can. And he was just normal Tyrese Halliburton, it looked like, for a good amount of Game 6, even though they're saying this is a multi-week injury that he's dealing with right now. But it's you gotta, no matter what happens, I think if you're a Pacer, I think if there's like one fan base where it's literally like we're playing with house money in a sense, it has to be the Pacers. Whereas like with Oklahoma City, if they lose this finals, I mean, oh my goodness, the devastation in that fan base, especially after, that 2011 finals that you lose against Miami. Everyone kept saying with that group, they'll be back. And this is the first time they've been back since. So if anyone knows that how fickle this can all be, it's the OKC fans. So I mean, the pressure is truly on. And that's why if the pressure's on, I think I might like Indiana, Leggy, because they've been the team that's thrived under the microscope this entire playoff run. Oklahoma City, they're the team that seems to crumble under pressure. And we'll see how that holds out. But no matter what, I want to be there with my popcorn ready, man.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a couple more things with this series. But the biggest thing for me is the emergence of Pascal Siakam yet again. When he won that title in Toronto, people were kind of thinking, what's up next for this guy? And he went to Indiana, and people were saying, okay, he's a good piece. He can help them get to the playoffs. He might help lead them to another lead another team to a championship as the second option. So, and that's no small task, No. I mean, people might say, well, he's not the number one option. That's not what matters. But being that second cog in the machine, that's a pretty elite thing. So
he might not be their number one option, but he's been like their most consistent scoring option throughout the playoffs. Like, he's been their most stable player.
Yeah, he's been their big. He's been that guy who has been able to take it in. He's been that guy to dunk on Jalen Williams. Who was the second guy he dunked on?
Jalen. He dunked on Jalen Williams. The second guy he dunked on, I'm not entirely sure. I think the Jalen Williams dunk is really the one that sticks out to me. It might have been. He might have dunked on Chet at one point.
Yeah.
But
either
I'm not
way,
entirely sure.
Either way, Pascal Siakam's been a revelation this offseason or this finals run so far. But Sean, have you seen who the confirmed players that are going to be a part of the starting five Netflix documentary are going to be?
Yes. Yep. Netflix could not have lucked in better than they did when they because they made these selections back in like October.
Yeah, 8 months ago.
Yeah. So Tyrese Halliburton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for those that don't know, are two of the starting five. And then you also throw in Kevin Durant, who DeMarcus Cousins was saying there were apparently fist fights in the Suns locker room.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see that at all. But like the fact, like we are getting incredible television from this season already, just from the basketball. Now throw in the people we have in this documentary. Sign me up, man. I'm gonna be watching day one.
And the two other, you have the kind of the Harden redemption tour, and you also have Jaylen Brown going through that horrendous Celtics disaster with Jason Tatum. Yeah. So there's a lot of content from this series, and I'm curious to see who's going to be on the next one. Cade Cunningham has to be on the short list, I think. He's one of the rising stars. He's being kind of thrown around. Wasn't he on Jimmy Kimmel Live?
Yeah. So, yep. He did phenomenally on Jimmy Kimmel, by the way. He had a really funny segment.
Yeah. What a sensation.
Yep. I get my triple and double A's.
it was just, I can't even talk about it. It was so cringe. It was funny, but it was,
well, it was the perfect dry humor. Perfect. Yeah. Like he nailed the vibe.
Okay, Sean, there was another big thing to happen while we haven't been recording. Desmond Bane goes to the Orlando Magic, and he seems kind of like that missing piece. They had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope before. They got quite an upgrade. KCP this past year was in the 46th percentile in three-point percentage and the 67th for three-point attempts. Desmond Bane, yes, and Desmond Bane, the 80th percentile in three-point percentage and the 87th in three-point attempts. So high volume, high making scorer there for Desmond Bane from three. Yeah. For me, that kind of worries me a little bit as a Pistons fan, because we saw not this season, but the past season, Orlando having that jump. We saw them make it into the playoffs, and we saw them actually battle. So then this season happened. There's injuries. Obviously, the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope he just wasn't good, like you said. They could come back next year and be a really good team. They might even jump Detroit. Do you kind of think that that's the trajectory for them?
Yeah, I think this puts Orlando right towards the top of the conference as far as, like what they can be. Desmond Bane just is such a solid addition. I think the price tag is the first thing that jumped out when the trade happened. It looks really steep, but as you listen to a lot of people talk about it, and as you just kind of alluded to as well, I think some of those, at least two of those picks out of the 4 or 5 that were given up, because I think there was like 4 unprotected picks and then a pick swap. I think 2 of those picks were getting off the KCP money because of the contract there. And I think there's kind of a realization happening about what happens when you sign people that played alongside Nikola Jokic after they've played with Nikola Jokic. And that's nothing to take away from Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but it appears that Orlando was looking to get one guy, and they got someone completely different. So for Orlando, they got off a really bad contract. They bring in someone who's, in my opinion, I think he might not have been Memphis's best player, but I think he was their most reliable player, their most consistent player in Desmond Bane. And here's a little trivia for you, Leggy.
Okay.
When is the last season the Orlando Magic have been above top 20 in offensive rating?
I'm guessing like the Hedo Turkoglu, JJ Redick-ish times. Was it then?
2011, 2012 is the last time they have been above top 20 in offense, and they were 15th. So to go over a decade without having a top, like to over a decade to have one of the 10 worst offenses in basketball. That's what we're talking about. Even with Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner, like they need guys who can create shots and opportunities for themselves and for others. And that's exactly what Desmond Bane can do. So I think it was a really good get for them. I think they identified, someone that could fit their culture and fit their needs. And I think they also like got someone that they can rely on, like getting a good return for their investment. As far as like where this puts the Pistons, that's what's so interesting about it, is because we don't normally see trades of this magnitude happen during the finals. Like that just doesn't really happen. Like I think one of the other trades that happened like pretty early last summer, but we're seeing be pretty consequential, was the Alex Caruso trade. And I don't know if it's quite that where it's like, oh, I think this swings a title, but I think this puts the, like, as of today, if they're healthy, I think this puts the Magic right up there with the Knicks, with, with the Cavaliers, with the Pacers, as like one of those teams that could potentially make a run. Now, as far as like where that leaves Detroit in all of this, that's the interesting thing, because on one hand, I definitely understand like the urgency of going, well, why not us? Like we could position ourselves, if we make the right move, to potentially go out and, and compete right now. But on the other hand, you have to be absolutely sure. And I think that's where like the Pascal Siakam comparison is like apropos, is like you have to make sure you're going and getting your Pascal, because it's like either you're going out and getting a Pascal Siakam and you're elevating and you're in these situations, or you take that gamble and you go get a Domantas Sabonis and you're watching someone else go reach that prize with some of your prospects that you trade away. So as far as talking about trading away, like, Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivey or especially Ron Holland, with how young and how untapped that potential is, I think you have to be absolutely 100% sure that you're getting someone that can make you one of those bona fide teams in the conference. Now, the interesting thing I'm looking at from the Memphis side is, what does this mean for them? Because you can't tell me they're going to be trying to be competitive after trading away Desmond Bane. You just can't. So could that open up an opportunity to trade for Jaren Jackson for a less realistic, more like fantasy trading, like GM perspective, but also like realistically, that seems like that could really open a doorway for Santi Aldama to come to Detroit as well, who's someone who could really impact the team. So I still hold the mindset that that if this team does have a chance to contend, I still think they could wait as far as the deadline to make that type of move. I think we've seen a lot of teams have success after midseason acquisitions, but I do definitely think the Pistons are going to have to be mindful and start being a little bit more aggressive as far as how they look at the landscape, because especially if Giannis stays in Milwaukee, and, that's going to be a team that even, I don't have any faith in Milwaukee as long as they have like the roster is currently constructed, but you can't dismiss Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, I think the Pistons are still in a good spot, but again, we've seen teams squander their position in whatever window we thought they could have had by making the wrong move. That's why I just talk about the importance of really making sure you're absolutely sure with what you're doing.
Well, Sean, that's why I think the deadline is the best place to do this. And I think we might not see, I really highly doubt we see anything this offseason, because any player that could have that trajectory and could change the trajectory of your team, every other team is going to want, and every other team could find a way to make it happen. And it's a huge bidding war where you would have to give up Asar, you'd have to give up Jaden Ivey, you'd have to give up picks, or you'd have to give up Ron Holland, you'd have to give up Tobias Harris, all those picks, you'd have to give up Ivy as well. At the deadline, teams are a lot more restricted, where they can't just go to another team and say, hey, let me salary dump all this, because then there's the player for player, there's having enough roster dudes on your roster. But at the deadline, it's a smaller pool. And so I think then you also can actually see what you have from these players, instead of just blindly throwing out Ron Holland in a deal where, I mean, he was the first Pistons rookie in a long time to get run in the playoffs and to get actually decent minutes in the playoffs for spans. So it would be so hard for me to want to get rid of those players unless you are getting a high tiered player, because everyone brings up a few similar names like Lauri Markkanen. You can even put Jaren Jackson even in that bunch. If you get those players and it doesn't work, you lose all value in them, because what we saw with Memphis was it didn't work. I mean, it worked well enough. You got DPOY, but as a team, didn't work. Larry Markin with the Jazz, obviously he hasn't played meaningful basketball in years. So if that doesn't work, what do you do then? I mean, it almost seems like if you make the wrong move, you lose out on Cade, or you don't get the best out of Cade.
I mean, this might sound mean, but has Lauri Markkanen ever played meaningful basketball ever?
That's fair. I mean, he had that all-star season, but it wasn't meaningful in terms of, I guess you're right. So that'd be a really big gamble for that. So what is the player we would want to go for to make it worth it? Because like I was just saying, you could go get a Jaren Jackson Jr. and you'd have to give up, what would it be, like a Jaden Ivey picks, and then what would Jalen Duren be in there?
I mean, I'm not sure what the assets would be. Just know that it would be a lot.
Yeah.
So that's he certainly is one of those guys that fits that bill. But I think especially like if you're Detroit, like you want to be mindful of like getting someone that, even if they're not like an all-star, like you want to get someone that you're absolutely sure is all-star caliber. Like a lot of conversations like, oh, well, Orlando, they gave up a lot for a guy who's never been an all-star. Well, Desmond Bane was a shooting guard who was in a really deep guard pool in the West. And he's a guy that if he's been playing in the East this entire time, he would have made the all-star team twice. Like just flat out. This is a guy who is a really dynamic offensive player. And I think we could see, like, I don't think his average is going to go up in Orlando because he's going to have to share the ball a little bit more. But, again, I think it's one of those really fickle, tricky balances. And it's not saying, oh, you can't trade for anyone because you go, oh, well, it's a risk. But, it's one of those things where, again, like when you know it's the right one, it will present itself.
And I want to say one thing on the Desmond Bane topic before we kind of nuke that one, because we've gone back to it quite a bit. But with Bane, everybody thought Orlando was going to go for a point guard. Everyone thought they were going to go for a guy who usually controlled the ball more, could be considered more of a point. They didn't do that. They got a guy who averages about 5 assists, though. And so what that tells me is that they're really willing to have the ball spread around, and they're wanting it in Paolo's hands. They're wanting it in Franz's hands. And then they want it in Bane and Suggs. It's not going to be just a traditional team. There's going to be a lot of ball movement. And I don't know how quickly they can pick up on that offense, because it's a pretty difficult thing to do, because the ball always has to be moving. And we've seen the ball stop with Paolo. We've seen the ball stop with Franz. So I'm really curious to see how it all fits, because you're right. They have a lot of people that need the ball, and they have a lot of people that need to score, because that's kind of what they do best. So the fit is kind of the scary thing, but at the same time, if it works, they're going to be moving the ball a lot, and they're going to it's not going to be hero ball. They're going to have open shooters because of lapses on the defense from having the ball continually moving. With KCP, his struggle was he went from, like you said, a Nikola Jokic team where he was open quite a bit of the time because they had other pieces as well, to a team where they were getting smothered inside, and they knew it was just going to go out to KCP.
Well, and also it's one thing to have the greatest playmaker perhaps in the history of the game being the one that sets you up for shots on the perimeter. It's another thing to go to a team that doesn't really have any truly great playmakers. Like that's going to be the thing is probably your best playmaker is going to be like either Paolo or maybe like an Anthony Black or like a Jalen Suggs. But like even Suggs, like he's not a natural point guard. He doesn't play like a natural point guard. In his career, he doesn't even average 4 assists a game.
Yeah, it's like they are the personification of just positionless basketball at this point, being able to all have their certain role, and it always shifts from game to game. And I think that's what makes them also very unpredictable, and that's going to help them.
Kind of like OKC, where they just have like a ton of guys who are athletic, who can defend, who can handle the ball, who can pass. Like, it's they both like aren't really like the greatest shooting teams. OKC obviously a lot better of a shooting team than Orlando, but I mean, I'll tell you this: if I'm a Pistons fan, I'm dreading the idea of facing a Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane backcourt, especially in a playoff series.
Yeah, that's terrifying. That's not a good matchup there. And I think you hit it on the head as well, Sean. Like with this Pistons team, you can afford to wait because you don't want to make the wrong move, and they're not going all in for a championship this next year. I think, if anything, I mean, you have Cade Cunningham. the goal is to get to that point where you are contending and you have a team where people look at it and say they could make it out of the East. They could make it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
I don't think this is that year. I mean, realistically, I don't know how many people would agree with that because of how wide open the conference is seeming to be. But I feel like, especially if they're going to play it patient, like Trajan has always been talking about, I don't think they're going to make a rash move. If they do make a move at the deadline, it's not for the next playoffs. It's for the year after, because then you have that offseason of continuity. You have that ability to then continue building around the core of Cade and then whoever you go get. But
I think if you're sorry to interrupt, I was just going to say, I think if you're a Pistons fan, your best case scenario is if this season is like the Luka Mavericks year where they got to their first conference finals, or the Tyrese season last year with the Pacers where they got to their conference finals. Not saying the Pistons could get there, but like if the Pistons can make a deeper run in the playoffs than people expect and establish as like, oh, that's one of those teams that's coming.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what you want.
Yeah. The worst case is they go into next year and they make the play-in and then they make it to, and then they get dominated in the first round by a 1 or 2 seed, which would probably be in Indiana or Cleveland and Orlando potentially. So, but the thing is, I don't think Detroit is, even if they go into the next year very similar to they are now, I still don't think they drop that low. It's like, I feel like some shit would really have to hit the fan at that point.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing they have to get through before they make any rash roster decisions is, or like any trades or in particular, is they have to figure out what they're doing with these extensions with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. And I just think, like, if you're talking about like Ivy's like tradability, I think you get an extension first. So
yeah, and that brings me to the next point, Sean. And we only have about 10-ish minutes left. We have a hard cutoff at 9:40. But can Ivy be that key addition? Because I feel like he's been the lost man, and we've talked about this a few times on the pod. But I think the sentiment can change day to day, because the addition of Ivy back to this squad would have done so much for this past playoffs against New York. We saw Cade get smothered, and we saw the role that Dennis Schroeder had playing with Cade Cunningham. Just imagine that being Jaden Ivey, who's even much, I would say, much more efficient as an inside scorer. He's able to get there and get easier looks. So, I mean, the big thing is, can Jaden Ivey be that Lauri Markkanen type impact player, especially when, let's say, he doesn't get his extension and it's a really cheap contract. There's not a lot of long-term there. Is that better than getting a Lauri Markkanen at a 30 million or 30 plus, whatever? Is that better than getting a Jaren Jackson on that inflated contract? And I know we talked about Lauri. You already talked about that, but
I know. I'm sorry. I just laughed because I was like, I just went back to the, what big game has he ever had? It's like, have that big Lauri Markkanen moment, such as,
well, you know what I mean? Like, is that Jaden Ivey impact more beneficial because of how cheap that contract would be? Because then you can afford to fill it out around the edges. But I feel like if you go and get one of these big guys, you start to get really restricted.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't have to give up any assets. Like, that's the other big thing, is like, you have someone on your team already. I think, listen, I think you already saw a lot of tangible growth and improvement throughout this last season with Jaden Ivey. And especially, I think you look at the fact that you could potentially sign him on a pretty movable extension that isn't going to like necessarily like hurt your pocketbooks. So I think he's someone that you just look at like what he can bring to the table. He was already approaching being like a 20-point a game scorer. Like, and he already was shooting 40+% like from beyond the arc. Like, the things that we wanted to see from Jaden Ivey as like a scorer, I think we were already seeing. The problem was we only saw it. What's that?
I said the game winners, the go-ahead buckets and clutch time. That's exactly what you want to see.
Yeah.
Sorry,
like,
go ahead.
I was just going to say the problem is we only got it for 30 games. Like, that's the problem. And it's because of an unfortunate injury. Whereas now, like, I think if he has a healthy season where he can put this together in like a full campaign, I think you absolutely like can look at him as a guy, you know, that can be that Robin, so to speak, or that wingman. Now, like, I also just bring up, you know, as I've said before, of like, I think the other major addition can be a full off season from an Asar Thompson, you know, an off season of Ron Holland being integrated in the system and being able to work on improvements for him. I also would point out the fact that there's a chance that Bobby Klitman can maybe join the rotation this season, being someone that's developing in the wings. So like, I think there's like already a lot of guys in house that could potentially either improve their trade value or like really tangibly contribute to this team on a night in, night out basis. So like that's one of the other reasons why to me it's like, why move anyone before the deadline when we still have hardly seen Ivy, Asar, Cade, and Duran together? Like,
Yeah.
why would you break that up so soon?
Yeah. If you trade Ivy, you're trading him at his lowest possible trade value. And it shouldn't even be that low because of what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
The come back from the injury healthy, you're probably going to be able to do what you were doing. And if he truly could have came back in this playoffs, he's going to still have a full off season to get some work in. So the big thing for me is why trade at the lowest value? And that's a big thing when you're talking about fantasy football, fantasy sports in general. You never want to trade a guy after you get all the bad news. You want to wait until something good happens, then you can move. Because for what you could trade Jaden Ivey for now, imagine if he does come back and does play well and you still say, the fit just isn't right, but he's a dang good player. Then you're moving up a whole nother echelon of players that you could get. You're not talking about the scum of the earth, Laurie Markkinens, because we hate him on this show, I guess. But we're talking about the Devin Bookers. We're talking about the Jalen Browns. We're talking about some elite players.
Yeah, no, I don't hate Laurie Markkanen. It's just,
yeah, you
how
hate
in the
the
hell
guy.
did he get into that conversation? That's just it's like the Toronto Raptors thing. Like,
yeah, it's all skill set. It's projection on what he could do on a better team. And that's the scary thing because you just don't know. But
the thing that I always go back to with Jaden Ivey is he the guy that you want to bet against and have to defend on the other side when he potentially takes that ascension? Because how many Pistons fans take the opportunity to bitch and complain about the fact that we didn't get Devin Booker, we didn't get Donovan Mitchell, we didn't get Tyrese Halliburton. You have one of those special dynamic athletic guards in-house that has shown a lot of the tangible signs of someone that could develop into an all-star caliber guard. And the first opportunity you can, you want to ship him out somewhere else. Like, I just don't know if that's the guy. Like, I think that's something you have to look at the lens of, which is the guy I would feel the least comfortable betting against. And Jaden Ivey's that answer to me by a country mile.
Yeah. Yeah. If you do, you have to get like a top 15, top 10 player because that's the goal for Jaden Ivey. And if you can see that vision, you don't want to trade for anything less because that what he probably is going to be is that.
Quite frankly, do not, like, if you trade him, do not, and I repeat, do not trade him in conference. If you can control it, do not make it so that he's someone that would have to be in your way come playoff time, because he is a guy that he seems like a super nice, like really compassionate guy, but he's also a fierce competitor where if you wronged him or if you bet against him, he will absolutely make you pay. And so I think for anyone that forgot how good Jaden Ivey was this season, I'd encourage you go to look up some highlights, because sports amnesia is a very real thing.
Yeah, it's been a while since we saw him play and people are just forgetting.
It's been a while.
Well, everyone, this has been the 313 Connect Live podcast, and those who have joined us live, those who are joining us after the fact, thank you for joining us back again. It's been a little bit. We're hoping to get more on a consistent trend. And Sean, you know what we didn't do?
What's that?
We didn't talk about Brennan. Brennan,
hey.
We miss you, man.
Yep. Shout out Brennan.
Yep. Brennan, let's get you back on this next one. We'll have to get that one rolling pretty soon. So, Sean, what have you been working on, man?
Yeah. Subscribe to From Half Court. Go check out the podcast there. Have an episode next week dropping with my guy Steve, Resball Pod, talking about the draft and if the Pistons could potentially trade up and what they could do at 37. So be sure and go check that out and just subscribe to From Half Court. We'll be there doing all the coverage and breaking down everything that happens this offseason.
Yep, I'm working on making sure a small human stays alive, and I'm also working on trying to get some sleep. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But Sean, we'll be back again next week, hopefully with Brennan here. I hope you all have a great week. Let's see if the Pistons make a Desmond Bain sort of move soon. We'll talk to you later. See ya.